Hello, hello. So I received some comments for the solar system texture map comparison part 3 on the last Planet 9 texture that I made myself, and some people were asking how did I make it. So I'm going to go through kind of a quick tutorial on how you can make something similar and kind of what's the process that I use. So let's get started. So kind of looking at this, right? So we have a cube, and before I continue, I'll try to simplify things for those that may not be super experienced with Blender, but I'll do my best to kind of break it down piece by piece. It's pretty straightforward. So we're going to hit X to get rid of this cube, where I use the hotkey X. Shift A to create I use a UV sphere. It's kind of controversial because it's like, it doesn't always join up at the end, especially at these parts right here. And you can deal with kind of poles that are very wrinkled. However, I think for this object, it's not that big of a deal, but for like some of the other objects that I used in my comparisons, I like to either use icospheres or I use other techniques to kind of minimize the wrinkling effect here. But anyway, what we're going to do is there are two parts of my Planet 9. There's the outside and the inside. So what we can do is I'm going to start with the outside, the inside first. I think that's a little more straightforward to kind of work with. So let's hit Shift 0.5. So now it's half the size. It's 1 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter. We're going to do subdivision surface, so kind of this modifier here. And we're going to increase that to, the render is going to be 3. Right now it's 2, but like 3 it looks like that, very smooth. And then on top of that, I'm going to right click, or you can go to object, and I'm going to go to, or actually is it under, yeah, it's here, shade smooth. We're going to click that, and now it kind of has an automatic smoothness, which it doesn't do the same as, it doesn't subdivide it, but it basically tries to kind of curve it out kind of naturally, but the subdivisions are still there. So you can still kind of see the bends even with shade smooth on, so it's important to kind of have both. So I'm going to put that at 2. Okay, so I think we have everything we need for the shape. The next thing I'm going to do is I am just going to duplicate that and then hit S and then 2. So that's going to be the outside. It's also going to be a circle of equal size. So, and if we go from kind of typical object mode to kind of wireframe mode, you can see the outside and the inside, kind of like how I started with. So let's start with the inside. So I selected the inner shape, and I'm going to go to the shader editor where the nodes is. I'm going to go to new. I'm going to click that. That creates kind of an automatic new texture to work with. And so this is kind of the most complicated, so this is where I recommend try to stick with me through this. It'll be a little tricky, but basically what I do is I'm going to do 2 mix shaders. So I just like to, you could do Shift A to get the type and then shader and then go to mix. I like to just kind of type it up. It's easier that way. I kind of let I'm going to leave kind of the fact value at 0.75. That's what I did. And you could vary it. This is just, you can vary it. For this second one, we're not going to use a number. We're going to plug something into this gray dot we see here, and give me a second. We're going to get to that, but for now, don't worry about what this value is. It doesn't really matter because we're going to plug something into this node here that's going to take over the value, kind of determining how much of one shader we want and how much of the other shader we want. So, all right. So the first thing is let's do an emission. Whoops. Emission shader. We're going to put that up there. And we're going to give this a strength of, I think I kind of played around with this, like 1.9, and then I kind of gave it this kind of deep cyan, kind of like that kind of a cyan blue texture, cerulean. And then what I did is that is going to be plugged into this first object here. Then I did kind of another emission, so I'm going to hit Shift D to just duplicate it. And I think we can disconnect this. This is going to go there. That's for later. Okay. I made this kind of the second one. I think it was like a value of like 2-ish. And then kind of a deep blue or something. I think I made it a little darker. This is the hex value you can use if you want, 182.784, or yeah, hex, and then this is the hex value for kind of the one I did. We are going to plug that into this shader. And then what we're going to do is we're going to kind of do a noise texture, and we are going to plug the fact value into here. So that's where I'm talking now. The number doesn't pop up. It's clearly determined by what we have for this noise texture here. And so the values that I had were 11 point, I think 0.9 for scale. And so what happens is 11.9, the higher the number for scale, the smaller the noise is. It's like the smaller the number, the bigger the it's going to clump up a lot more, versus you make it finer when you increase the scale. Think the detail I had like around 15-ish or 14, something like that. So detail, it makes it very detailed, versus low detail means it's blurry. Roughness can stay the same. Distortion can remain at 0. Distortion just kind of twists it a little bit. Helps add irregularity to what you want. Okay, so we're going to add a color ramp. And we are going to plug this in. Oh, I just realized I made a quick error. It's actually not that big of a deal. There's actually 3 mix shaders. This first one kind of goes here. Yeah. The way I did it is, I kind of repeated this, so so what I did is, there are actually 3 mix shaders. This first one, these two don't have numbers because they're determined kind of by fact values that are from other nodes. So these two are very similar, versus the 0.75 that kind of remains the same. But essentially you have 3 mix shaders that I kind of have chained together. This value of around 2, this kind of very much teal, very much turquoise cyan value, bright cyan, like the CYA colors, that goes into that shader. Alright. Then, so if we kind of look at what we have, right, we have these 2 that go into this and is determined by the noise. You have that and that going into here, determined by the color ramp. And we're going to expand on what this color ramp is. We'll get to that in like 5 seconds. And then this mix shader here, that actually goes into the bottom. And then this, where was it? Yeah, this principled value. Oh, not what I wanted. Let's undo that. This principled volume, that's going to go, the BSDF, that's going to go into this shader here. And the color is going to be determined. We could make it, I think for now it doesn't matter too much, but you can kind of keep it at a deep blue. You could almost use one of the other Planet 9 textures that I used in my other videos. That's kind of what I ultimately ended up doing anyways, but this kind of deep blue that you see, that's going to work out just fine. The roughness, subsurface, they're going to be kind of determined by, I guess we could add it now because I've done kind of the recap. There's not really much to say. Once these kind of come together, the 0.75 and then the material output that outputs the shader. So let's add the noise texture, because I use the second one, and that kind of has its hands in a whole bunch of places. So that's going to have its hands in the subsurface, the roughness, the emission strength, and the alpha. And alpha determines transparency. So emission, that just how much does it glow, roughness, how glossy is it. If it's a roughness of 0, that's going to cause it to be incredibly glossy. And if there's one object in the most recent video, I think it was one of the minor planets, that I had it glossier than I would have liked. And if I were to go back, I would have, before I rendered everything, I would have made that a much rougher looking object, because the glare from the gloss, from the reflection, can be a little too much to deal with. So sometimes you either want to go kind of Metaball Studios, and I think other size comparison places have done it, where you make it either very glossy, like a marble, or you make it very rough. I prefer to make it rough, but making it glossy is not a bad option. Okay, so anyway, the values I used were around 13.2, 2 for detail, and then, yeah, 0.5, 0, yeah, these were basically the same. Another thing to take into account is I'm going to make the emission, speaking of emission, we're going to make that the same as the base color, so now it both is kind of reflecting that color but also glowing it. If you decide to include kind of a image texture, which that's how you use the atmosphere, like how I normally make textures for planets is you import an image texture, and then you kind of use a texture coordinate, which you'd plug back here to get it all properly mapped out. You make sure it's sphere, yada yada yada. Maybe there's a bump map if it's a rocky object. And then you'd plug it into here. And for the Planet 9 object that I did, I used another map that was referenced in the video, and I helped make this. It was I think the Planet 9 map that was a part of this in creating this eye like Planet 9 was the first one. I think it was it was the second one that I used, the one from Solar Walk, I believe. But anyway, this should basically do the job. It's not really that big of a deal. You're not going to really see it. So this color will basically get you the right answer. And it's also, Planet 9 is a fictional object, so you have a lot of freedom to not be perfectly accurate. Like, what accuracy is there in the end? So I think that should be good. Oh, we have the color ramp. I didn't get to do that. So that is going to be a roughly 0.7, kind of like there. Actually, a little more. 0.75, 0.76, yeah. We can go with 0.75. And then the last noise texture that I ended up using was this, so Shift D. And for the sake of it, I made this 40, so this adds this kind of W axis right here. This can just be good for varying the kind of where the noise stuff scatters without having to alter what the noise looks like. So like, let's say you have a specific noise texture, but maybe you want to have it so it's like how the sun's corona or the sun's photosphere can vary over time. Varying this W axis can be very good with helping with that. And maybe I do another tutorial on that, kind of showing that better. But what I did is I think it was like 1.1 for W. The scale was 8.2. The detail was, 0.5. The roughness was, I think, also 0.5, or maybe a little. No, it was like 4.92, like just a tiny, something like that, 4.93. And then the distortion, I think this is the only time I actually made it more irregular, and I put it at 2. But yeah, this is kind of the layout that I ended up having for kind of the inner Planet 9. Let's go back to the large texture, and this one is actually a lot quicker. It's very funny. You think this would be the more complicated one, but it's actually not. And there's not even like a image or anything needed. Like, this is actually very quick, so only one mixed shader. So last time we had 3, there's only 1 this time. And the fact value is just 0.5, basically, or so that's the only one with a fact value. The second one, and only second one that we have is, no, I wrongly placed. There we go. So yeah, one with a fact value that just has a number, and then this one, we're going to have something be plugged into it. So this is important for not just Planet 9, but if you want to give an atmosphere to anything, you want to use layer weight and then give a facing value. You plug your facing value basically into the fact value. So what this does is it makes kind of the edges more opaque, and then the center where you're viewing it more transparent. And that's really good for mimicking kind of how an atmosphere works. To make that happen, you obviously need a transparency near kind of the front. So we're going to use kind of a transparency value here. And then we're going to plug this principled into this mix shader. And we're going to put an emission into the gap left here. And then the last thing, how do we determine the last node before we go back and kind of change the values? We need to add a noise texture, and we're going to plug that into this fact node into the blend. So now the blend of the layer weight is determined by noise, which is what you want. If you don't, you can do it where, if you look at my older videos, I used to have a version of Planet 9 that didn't have like variation in its upper atmosphere. It didn't vary. It was completely smooth. And that, like my solar system size comparison 2020 video, that did that, where the Planet 9 used to be smooth and not have variation. That's fine. I mean, it looks cool. It looks like an eye. But I decided, you know what, I wanted to be a little fancy for this video. I wanted to just, it's been 5 years, I wanted to take things up a notch, so I added this node. I made a scale of 13, 13-ish, 13.4. Detail, I just cranked that up to 15, because why not? Roughness is the same. Distortion, barely any. I mean, you can add a little, I don't know, if you want. Doesn't really matter. I guess it's fine. You could do whatever. The principled, there isn't really much to do except, yeah, the alpha is good. The only thing I really did, I think, that I'm looking at kind of I took the base color, kind of made it this. Made it like cyan, actually more of a greenish tint. Very bold. So I made it as bold as possible. I think it was, no, it was, I think that is somewhat okay to kind of work with. If we go to HSV, something along those lines. Something along those lines. Yeah, I don't know. You can play around with it. This is basically what I had. Actually, give me a quick second. I want to see if I can get the actual values that I normally got. I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. I found the values that I used. So this one was kind of pretty dim. And then this one was decently bright, kind of a little off to the side. Kind of like that. Yeah. Those values look about right. That's what I used. And then, yeah, basically once you kind of have this set up, you're pretty much okay to go. Maybe, I think the roughness may have been a little lower, but yeah. So if we go back, this is basically it. This is all you need to do for the outer texture. Yeah, it's actually not that complicated. You don't even need, again, you don't need the noise texture. You could just have this. That would be enough, because that's what you typically use for an atmosphere. You could think of it as the atmosphere I made twice as big as the actual planet in this model. You could think of it like that. Normally, for something like the Earth or Jupiter, it's like 0.5% bigger than the actual object, or maybe 1% bigger. Like, you can barely see the size difference, just enough so that it pops out a little.
But yeah, so once you have all the nodes set up, you should basically get something like this where you have a bit of a high opacity near the edges and a low opacity near the center with the transparency. Kind of, you can see more clearly what's happening in the core. We also see kind of some thunderstorm activity represented with those lighter patches, those light spots, and a kind of rough, uneven, you could say a sort of terrain, if you will, for an ice giant. There's no terrain, obviously, but kind of a difference in atmospheric flow going on. And yeah, so that's kind of the main model that we have. And so, yeah, kind of from there, our Planet 9 model is done. Again, we basically achieved this through kind of our core model, where if you want to do a simplified version, you really only have to plug the emission shader into here and then call it a day. But otherwise, you could follow like this. So to get both the patches kind of represented through the bottom area, and then the top area is going to deal more with the a little bit more of the difference in kind of the noise overall pattern. And then for the other section, if you just want a flat surface, kind of more of an eye, just get rid of this noise texture and you'll be good. Literally, the upper atmosphere is actually a lot easier to work with. So yeah, that's all I have for today. So thank you so much. Thank you for sticking with me. And if you have any questions, let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I will be with you all soon. So yeah, see you soon.